But yeah, he's going to be playing the music for a while.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's inaugural episode of Nerds on Tap, where we'll explore the intersections between human personal and professional development and technological advances. Please try to subscribe to our podcast so you can see some of the exciting developments as we work out the show. With me today, I have our local nerd, Tim.
How you guys doing? My name's Tim Schaefer, and yeah, I'll be co-hosting this Nerds on Tap.
Awesome. And of course, Suds, our producer on the other side of the room. Say hi, Suds.
Hey, everybody.
And today's remote guest is Brian Wilkey. He is the Executive Vice President in charge of operations of Digital Boardwalk. He keeps the wheels turning at Digital Boardwalk. And he just recently got his Microsoft 365 Certified Enterprise Administrator Expert qualification. So very proud of Brian on that. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So the way these shows are going to work moving forward, for those of you just tuning in, we'll have 3 segments per show. Today, we'll talk about human, personal and professional development in segment 1, and then we'll go into the evolution of technology and the pivotal points in technology that have changed the landscape as far as devices and things go. And then we'll wrap it up with the intersection of humans and how technological advances have impacted the way we work, live, and play. But there's a little twist in our show. Before each segment, we will taste either a local or nationally recognized microbrew and comment quickly on it. Brian, did you get your shipment of beer? Say yes. I know you didn't. So it's our inaugural show, folks, but we will be shipping beer out to our guests.
Look,
so
just imagine you're drinking a beer. That's all that counts, okay?
So the first beer that we have here is Oyster City Mill Pond Dirty Blonde Ale. Suds, why don't you give us the lowdown real quick on that beer?
Well, the Oyster City Brewery is from Apalachicola, USA. This is a Dirty Blonde Ale. It's an easy ale with a well-balanced, crafty malt structure, hopped with adenum, and pairs well with oysters, sunny beaches, and salt water. Also won the gold medal U.S. Beer Championship in 2020.
I
do like it. Like, for real.
It goes down smooth. It's got a good aftertaste, and I just learned that Suds is a really good reader.
What's the percentage on that? That's what I want to know.
That's a 5.5. It's very smooth, and I agree it does go well with oysters.
Very smooth for 5.5. Wow.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. I like it. I mean, I've had low alcohol content all the way up to
exactly
the Golden Monkey, which I'm glad we don't have on the show today because we probably wouldn't finish it. So let's get started. This show is not about beer. We just like to drink beer and taste beer. So we're gonna be involving that in each one of our shows. So I'd like to kick off with the human evolution, changes in we as humans over the years, both professionally and personally, and what impacted us to make those changes. And I'm going to start with Brian here. So Brian, over the last 20 years, how would you say you've evolved as a human, and what made you change? Like, I mean, did you look different back then? And I mean, did you wear your hair crazy? What made you? I have watched you. We've known each other, 15 years, 16 years?
Yep.
Yeah. And I have seen massive changes in you, as I know you've seen in me. So let's start with you.
Gosh, that's such a tough question to answer.
I mean, you could break it down by like decades, or like, hey, this gap here, I used to look like this and be like this, and now I'm this. And
I feel like this will tie in a bit more as we kind of bridge the gap into the technology side, but I feel like I've grown more skeptical of things over the years. Just as I've learned how to deal with all the information that's put in front of us day to day, through social media and through, propagation of the internet and everything else that's happened over that time, marketing and how that's been shaped over the years. I've had to grow skeptical of what's presented to you and learn how to research and read between the lines and get to the truth, which is really hard to find these days. So that's really shaped the way I look at things and the way I kind of function day to day.
Well, with that note right there, think about it. 10, 15 years ago, I don't even feel any of us were in this space because we were just kind of told information, we accepted it, and that was it, right? But the more information that gets fed and the more you figure out as you live your life, right, the combination of it all, you're starting to realize, oh, this isn't how I thought it worked. This isn't how I thought it worked. And you start to dissect things a whole lot more to the point to where you're at now of like, now you're skeptical of everything you see because so many times you thought one way to end up being something entirely different, right?
You know what's funny? Brian, you said something about truth, trying to find truth.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for us nowadays because everybody hides behind screens and creates false truths or false narratives. I actually watched a movie the other night. I think it was on Netflix. I think it was called Jesus Revolution, and it was about this hippie pastor and this conservative pastor that came together back in the early 1970s.
Calvary Church. My mom went to that church in California. That's where she grew up. And so I watched that because there was a strong connection with my family with that. She was one of the couples they showed of the marriages going on there in the beginning. She was married in that church that they were showing.
And what were they looking for? Truth.
Yeah,
the hippies,
exactly.
In that movement were looking for truth. So it's a great point that Brian brings up. I mean, there's so many things that impact us. I mean, I started my first business back in 98, 99, 98-ish. And back then, and I didn't even remember what I looked like back then until my wife pulled a Polaroid out of the attic that she had found, and I looked at it. I had earrings and piercings and bleached blonde hair. Did I look like that when I met you, Brian?
No, you were a little bit more professional then.
I think when I met Brian, I was probably a suit and tie guy with a little bit more subdued haircut.
Yeah.
And I met you probably, I want to say about a decade after that picture was taken. But I was still trying to find my truth back then. So,
well, we all still are, I guess, right? Yeah.
And, another thing that changes us as humans is people we meet along the way. I mean, this is funny. When I met, so for instance, Brian, when I met Brian, he was, I think, 18 or 19, and I was probably, 21.
Yep.
No, I was probably late 30s, mid to late 30s. I know I was pushing 40, but, it's funny because I have video content from back then of all of us, and I can see the evolution and change in us. But it's also about the mentors that we meet.
Yes, big hand. So many pivotal changes were because I found someone who taught me a great deal, and like almost not just, I don't know, it feels like exponential growth in a very short amount of time. If one person you can find to where you're just like, I want to, just a role model and someone that you really can see doing things right, at least in your head. Who knows what they're thinking on the other side of that, but at least in your head, you're like, they're doing everything I would love to be doing myself. And you just start going out path. And because of that, that's what gives you the motivation to keep going forward. Right. And you start making big changes real fast whenever you can find a mentor like that. And so I think there are super pivotal points in your life whenever you find a good mentor. Yeah.
I remember it was actually back in high school. I had a teacher. Her name was Mrs. Maurer. She was my AP literature teacher.
Okay.
And I got into that class, and of course we're, reading book after book, and I was not doing well at all. I mean, I was normally like a straight A student, and I was getting like C's on everything in that class. And so, I sat down with her one day and tried to figure out, what am I doing wrong? And she kind of pointed out that my mistake was I was a surface level, literal, like word for word interpreter of the text. And what she was wanting was to go deeper, read between the lines, find the hidden meaning, find the purpose behind the message. The example she gave was the sky isn't blue. Everyone looks at the sky and thinks it's blue, but it's not blue. It appears blue because that's just the way the light refracts off of the upper atmosphere, but it's not actually blue. And that really changed the way I looked at everything. I stopped looking at things surface level and started, like I said, reading between the lines and digging deeper. Nice. So I always remember her as an early mentor.
That's fantastic. Brian, what kind of dog do you have over there?
You can hear. She is a Hungarian Vizsla.
Say that 5 times real fast.
No, I couldn't even say it once. Say it one more time, Brian.
So, I've had a lot of mentors in my life. I started my first business in the late 90s, and I knew squat about business. And I wasn't a fan of school or, reading books at the time. I didn't read a lot of books unless it was a comic book. But I will tell you something. When I got into business, I quickly learned about, checks and balances and accounting, and actually went to classes for it because I knew that was the core of any business. But as I grew and as I met more mentors in 25 years of being in business, I've learned. And then I learned to, this is funny, I learned to read books, right? I have read so many books, and you'll see on the walls back here, they might be out of frame right now, but there are so many books on my wall, and you'll be able to find these on our website in our shop on the nerdsontap.com. A little shout out to a local company called Studer Community Institute. Quint Studer started that. I got to be the mentor on one of those. I was actually invited to be the mentor, and I was humbled by it, because somebody actually wanted to learn and pull from my brain. Now, back in the 90s, not a lot of these types of things existed.
Yeah.
So big shout out to them and other mentors that I've met. My dad was a big mentor for me. He taught me what not to do and how to just get down to the grind. He was one of those good old baby boomers that, basically said, work hard.
Yeah.
And things will come.
Yeah.
And Brian, when we started Digital Boardwalk, I don't know if you remember, I'm going to see if you can finish it. But something that I said was I didn't want to focus on what? Profit. I didn't want to focus on profit. If we do the right thing, the profits will come. I mean, when you start your first business and you're young, maybe in your 20s, you're chasing anybody that'll give you a check, right? Because it keeps the lights open. But what I learned over the years, and I had the ability, or I was in a situation where I didn't need to chase every check. And I told Brian, let's not chase profit. Let's chase doing the right thing for the customer, even if the customer thinks we're trying to sell them something. Make sure they're getting what they need to fulfill that business.
When I started here, that was a big thing I noticed out of you more than anything else, is because I worked a lot of big companies in the past, but they have hundreds, if not thousands of employees all over the world kind of levels, right? Apple, Asurion, all this. But I'm thinking but no one is ever caring about the person. They're just seeing him as a number, right? And I felt that difference being around Shoop, is realizing, it's not all talk. He actually believes he does want to just do what's right, and the money coming after the fact. And
well, I appreciate that, but you should be referring to me as Mr. Shoop Dog, right?
Mr. Sheepdog.
Hey, I like it, Mr. Sheepdog.
That's funny. But yeah.
So Brian, so let me ask you, let's talk about books. I mentioned them earlier, and I'll get into the books that changed my life most dramatically out of all the books I've read. But if you could only pick one book, what book would it be that had the most dynamic impact on your life?
You're going to hate this answer, but I really can't think of a book. And that's because as a child, I lived in the library, so I read all sorts of books. But of course, it's your children's kind of books, fantasy and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Once I got old enough to read any books of value was the birth of the internet. And so I switched completely to online research and reading. But having that wealth of information at my fingertips got me addicted to learning from a really early age. So there wasn't really, a specific book per se. It was just the internet and all the information it had to offer. Every single day, every evening, after school, after work, I was reading and researching all this information online, whatever interested me at the moment. So
I can piggyback off of that because I was very similar age and very similar boat. We weren't really reading books because we were reading so much material online, whether it was articles, forums, whatever, right? But I still eventually led to where, like, okay, well, I want to actually try to read a book. And I had a really hard time doing so in the beginning. But by the end, now I can actually start to do it because I had to pretty much train myself. But it took we just weren't in that mode because we grew up with the internet being so large. By the time we were late teens, there was kind of no purpose to reading a book. But I don't want to word it that way. There's definitely a great purpose, but it's just we didn't think that. We just were getting so much information so many other places. Book wasn't really our number one pick, not by a long shot.
Yeah, books were the escape. I would use that as entertainment. Reading fantasy and everything else. But when it came to real world, information, it was always coming from internet.
Yeah. It's funny. I get a lot of my information from internet nowadays, and pull everything online. It's so easy. It's so quick. But I remember in the 90s, pre-first business, just still trying to figure it out, just still trying to find my truth, right? I was always in a bookstore, usually in the business section, reading about something. And it was usually technology related because I knew I wanted to start a technology company.
Yeah.
But I wanted to learn how to get it going. What do I need to do? And I would go in there and sit in the bookstore and a lot of times just read the book in the bookstore because I couldn't afford
But that's awesome
to buy
though,
one.
that you're hustling that hard trying to get whatever information you can. And think about in the 90s, even Windows 98, you're still in dial-up days if you want to think about it that way, right? So it's like we were not finding this information online. if all the way till pretty much the early 2000s, that's pretty much when we start shifting to where most people start gathering from online.
Windows 98. You guys are so young.
But I'm wording that way on purpose to show like you're still in dial-up. You still aren't being able to spread information that quickly and that universal. Yeah.
What was it? Encyclopedia Britannica or something like that.
God. Yeah. My dad, I think, bought them from some guy that came to the door. We had a whole bookshelf full of them. I know when I was a kid, I wanted to be an architect. So I studied Frank Lloyd Wright, and I would go to the encyclopedia and read about these people, and learn more. But with the sake of time, I want to get into the last piece of this. Let me touch on the two books that have impacted my life. One book I know Brian has heard me say over and over and over again. It's a book called E-Myth. What is it, Brian?
E-Myth.
Yeah.
E-Myth.
E-Myth, Revisited by Michael Gerber. You can find it on Amazon, ladies and gentlemen. But that book, my wife, I was in a situation where I was trying to sell a company that was in turmoil. It was during the economic recession, and I sat in the parking lot after meeting with a broker who basically told me it's not worth anything. And she called me, said, how's it going? And I told her, and maybe there was a tear shed. And I remember telling her what he said. And I'm not going to get into the other story about how Digital Boardwalk was born because of that moment.
Cool.
But because we're talking about books.
Yeah.
But E-Myth Revisited teaches you how to treat any business as a franchise by taking little things, systematic processes, and breaking them down and departmentalizing them. So, for instance, little things like the shirt you wear, the hat you wear, the way you greet someone at the door should always be a certain way. And if it's a certain way, I can train that to a new hire to do it exactly like I want to. Now, there's an old analogy that I used to use, and I used to use it on Brian and a few other people in the early days of Digital Boardwalk a lot, and they used to laugh at me because I would always talk about what, Brian?
The pickles.
Huh?
The pickles.
The pickles. So McDonald's.
Yeah, I'm lost, but keep going.
McDonald's. So McDonald's is two things. McDonald's makes a great hamburger, for fast food, but it's also a real estate company. But the big thing about McDonald's, and I learned this from reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the big thing about McDonald's in referring to the book in E-Myth was, when you pull into a McDonald's drive-thru, you're already picturing in your head or tasting that burger in your head because you know it's going to taste the same way every time, right? It's 2 pickles, 2 circles of ketchup, 1 circle of mustard, and it's wrapped the same way, put in a bag, and you get it. Now, hopefully, back in the day, you'd get it with packs of ketchup with your fries and everything, and then that's changed. But here's the deal. It's the same way every time, and they can hire someone and teach them that same thing. And that is what, from day one, we wanted to instill in the DNA of Digital Boardwalk. When you were hired, Tim, did you have a welcome package? Was there an onboarding process? Yeah?
Yeah.
Was it impressive?
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, I was more impressed by over anything else. I think I've told you already was just the back end documentation to everything. Cool. That's what impressed me. As nerdy as that is, but yeah.
Now, another book that impacted me, and then we'll get into the next segment, is a book up here on my shelf called The Power of Moments. Now, this goes hand in hand with E-Myth. Now, I had the pleasure of introducing Dan Heath. Chip and Dan Heath co-wrote this book. They're obviously brothers. I was able to introduce him on stage at an entrepreneurial event. Funny thing is, backstage, he's trying to prep for his talk, and of course, I had to introduce him, so I went up to him and I go, "Now, let me get your name right. It's Chip Heath, right?" And he just looked at me. He didn't think it was funny, I don't think, but that book, if you're listening, Dan, had an impact. He talked about a hotel in California, I think it was called White Castle, that was competing against all these big chains. And it was an old cement block style.
Wait, White hotel. Castle, that's the alternative to Crystal,
yeah.
Right?
But in the hotel world, this was a local owned, operated hotel. The thing about this hotel, though, they figured it out. So he went to TripAdvisor, and he saw this hotel was well above any hotel listed on TripAdvisor. It had the best reviews, this and that and whatever, so he decided to book it. And he took his kids. He showed up, and he goes, "What is this?" You went in, it was old school. You walked in the outside, this and that. But here's what was different. When they walked into the lobby, he was introduced by someone in a tuxedo. And he's like, "Oh, this guy's walking up to me. He's in a tuxedo." He passed right by him and went to his children. Leaned down, offered him candy.
Okay, awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
So then they're out at the pool, and there's a hotline, a phone hotline by the pool. It says unlimited popsicles. The kids would call the hotline and order a popsicle, and that man in a tuxedo would come out with a tray with all these flavors of popsicles on it. And the child, so who is the influencer? If you have a family, who's the influencer on where you stay? A lot of times it's your kids.
Yeah, it really is. What neighborhood you're picking, what schools are nearby, all of that, yeah.
But the power of moments, if you want to relate that to running a business, it's the power of moments. The welcome package that you had when you came in. Now, we used to clap people into the room when they were hired. We kind of nixed that because people would get embarrassed and, and this and that. But it's the little things. Thank you card. A thank you card. The impact a thank you card can have on someone.
Yep. No, it's for sure the little things that count, like them being able to order popsicles, like you're saying. That weirdly makes all the biggest moves. So, let's hear what we can do here. Go ahead and knock out the next two, and that way we can introduce them both here, and then we'll do one and do the.
Oh, you just want to get drunk?
No. Oh yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
So, Suds, let's go ahead and talk about. We've got Emerald Republic, Luminescent Shores American Lager.
All right, that's the Emerald Republic Brewery in Pensacola, Florida. 4.2% alcohol. It's a highly drinkable American lager with a light body, low bitterness, giving away to a light malt character. A perfect beer for relaxing at home, in the pool, or on the shorelines.
Perfect.
Yeah, I like
Jared.
it. I like it. This is a good light-bodied beer. It's easy to drink. Not a bitter aftertaste.
I don't know how to describe that. It's very different than any beer I've had. It almost tastes.
It almost tastes like it's got a little fruity tone to it on the aftertaste.
Yeah.
All right. So the next section, we're going to talk about the evolution of tech, and to put it into perspective, we're going to talk about our ages, so we can so our audience can put it into perspective.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to ask you how old you are. I was a 70s child and an 80s teenager. What about you?
I mean, I don't care if I say what age I am, but anyone can figure it out when we name the generations anyway. Because, yes, when I was a kid, grew up in the 90s, right? And then by the time I'm like, teenager and going on, right, that's when the 2000s start to hit. And so most impactful, I feel, for most people are those teenage years, right? So technically, whenever I say a 90s kid, I'm not learning these impactful big moments when I'm 7 years old. If I did, it was all subconsciously, you know what I mean? So technically, if you really think about it, I was raised by 2000 to 2010 in terms of anything that's going to be really powerful and anything that's going to impact me a lot. Stuff I remember to this day and what I learned from and all of that.
Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I'd be about the same. Late 90s, early 2000s was, the memorable parts.
Brian, what was, during that time, what was the first impactful emergence of technology that you remember dating back to your childhood?
Oh gosh, I mean the first one had to be dial-up internet, so that was that was late 90s.
700 hours a month.
Yeah,
I want to say that was what, 94, 95, 93, 94, 95.
Prodigy.
Yeah, we didn't have it in the household until probably 98. But yeah, that was huge. I remember fighting my dad at night for internet time.
Same.
Yeah. Gosh, expanding on that, I remember even into the early 2000s, my dad thought dial-up internet was the fastest we would ever need, and there was no reason at all to have multiple people online at the same time in the household. So eventually I got a job because my dad wouldn't pay for DSL. And then I bought the DSL plan for the family just so I could be on online at the same time.
Funny.
I mean, do y'all remember Bell South?
How old were you when you bought that?
Well, I started working when I was 14. And that was the reason I got the job. So, yeah.
So your dad, Marty, I'm friends with them. So what was going through his? What did he say to you? Was he like, okay, Brian, we're just going to follow your lead?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think this is a generational thing because at the time, like he appreciated what the internet could do, but he didn't really see the potential in it like I did, I guess. So, I was really eager to spend a lot of time on there, learning, but to him, it was still a tool just for checking emails and, hopping on Amazon or whatever the shopping was at the time.
I think and now I'm going to date myself. I'm a 70s child, 80s teenager. And the most impactful for me, and y'all, I don't even know if I want to talk about it on here. It's the emergence of the PC.
Okay.
So, you guys had it in your life. You don't remember not having computers in a household, do you?
I do.
Yeah. We didn't have a computer until I was older.
But that's
my
only
first
because
one was
of personal parents and all of that. Technically,
Yeah.
we could have if the situation arose.
Yeah, they were around.
Yeah,
My first one was Windows 3.1.
Okay. Yeah. So I got my first computer in 1983. Now it wasn't a PC; it was an Atari 800. And I learned how to code in BASIC on it. And going back to what Brian talked about, dial-up internet. So for you youngsters listening in, prior to dial-up internet, you could dial into my parents' house and access the Rampage BBS, which was designed for skaters. But my entire audience was helicopter pilots because we lived outside of Fort Rucker, Alabama. So I had all these pilots coming on thinking I was an adult, that I was just some other pilot running a BBS. And for those of you that don't know what a BBS is, it stands for Bulletin Board System. And it was a way for people to call into these numbers and access information just like you do on the internet today.
Which later evolved into news groups. I don't know if y'all remember those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I had message boards on there. I had other things. And all I cared about as a 14-year-old kid was software. I just wanted games. I wanted to play games. So I literally would, ask people to upload to gain more access to the higher levels so they could get, I had BBS numbers and things that I would give them that was listed in these boards, but they had to upload stuff to me.
So there's a connecting fiber between all of us. I'd bet this whole room is anytime you're trying to get further in tech, that wall, at least for me, I was like, I couldn't get something to work of something I was just trying to play, right? And I went through all these technical hurdles to get it to run. Next thing I know, when that keeps happening, hundreds of times, now you know so much more than you did prior, only because you were just trying to play whatever stupid game. But that's what drives the course of you learning how to dig into Windows, dig into whatever other software just to get that accomplished.
And
it's funny you say that.
Well, like I said, the PC, I think, had most impact on me as a child. And if you think of what technology has really impacted the world more than anything, we can talk about social media, we can talk about dial-up internet or high-speed internet, but really, why would you need any of that if you didn't have a PC to connect it to or a device that started it all? I mean, we have a computer in our pockets now, but it all started with those larger microprocessors and those larger things that helped us build a tool that we all use to work and play today. Oh, and we didn't have cell phones either.
Yeah.
So today you pick up the cell phone, call your buddy, hey, where's the party?
Yeah.
When we were kids, we couldn't do that. So we put little CBs in our cars. And we would call, there were a certain amount of friends. We all had these little CBs and we would, hey, where's the party? Hey, we're meeting at the normal spot. And we'd go. But it's,
because we would wait 4 or 5 days for a response sometimes from a person, and we were just accustomed to that.
Think of the changes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of CBs, when I think of CBs, I think of Smokey and the Bandit.
Smokey and the Bandit, yeah.
Okay, so
I mean, I grew up on the road, so we had a CB in the truck, and we would talk to the truckers on the highway. Yep.
Same here. My dad had one, and
But you don't see it. Even,
I know.
I mean, I'm sure ranchers might still use some of that technology, but I mean, you don't see them anymore. So it's interesting, the evolution of tech.
Yeah.
And that's going to take us into our third segment, but we get to have another. Are you going to be able to make it through these 4 beers, co-host?
Easily.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and introduce beer number 3. We've got a Copper Point South Florida Brewing Company. Looks like a A10 red IPA with a 7% alcohol volume. This is an India Pale Ale. Suds, give us the lowdown.
That's right. That's Copper Point Brewing in Boynton Beach, Florida. It's a red IPA. That's a approachable yet complex IPA with solid balance. Darker caramel malt adds backbone and guarantees you can drink a few without crushing your palate. It has a hue of rich mahogany, and the abundance of mosaic hops adds tropical notes of passion fruit and mango.
How did you memorize all that, Suds?
Magic.
Ooh.
That's my type of beer right there.
Now
That's good.
that's got some bite to it right there. We're going up in the alcohol content. I like it, though.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to go into segment 3. This is our final segment of today's show. We talked about the psychological and personal and professional changes in our appearance and everything as humans over the evolution of time.
Yeah.
And why we made those changes. We talked about the evolution of tech by looking back to our childhood and going, hey, this is where we were as children, and this had an impact on us. But now we're going to talk about the crossroads of these technology emergences, or these emergences of technology, and the psychological impact it has on us as humans, both individually and collectively.
Okay.
So, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is social media. You know, in the beginning, I loved social media because it tended to bring people together by sharing things like pictures of our animals and pictures of the food we eat.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Oh, I miss those days, by the way.
Yeah, you know,
I miss the MySpace days.
the MySpace days. Now
Yeah,
it's changed.
good social media.
Because it was just fun and people sharing
Yep.
their fun times in life. Now it's what? Arguments?
It's hatred. I mean, I feel like people, it's easy. You know, when I was a kid, none of this existed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you had beef with someone and you felt confident enough, you went up to them and told them your beef. And then you might meet at 3:00 in the parking lot and duke it out or whatever. But nowadays, it's easy to hide behind a screen. It's easy to tell somebody, oh my God. Or, you know, I was just reading today on the NFL. I'm a Saints fan, and I was on there, and you know, people were bagging on Jameis Winston. You know, he's our backup quarterback this year, but people were bagging on the way he played. But there was a lot of hatred being spewed, and I'm like, you know, it's easy for you people to do that. Try doing it to his face.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, social media was one of those roller coasters. We loved it growing up. That was such a fundamental part of our childhood. Like I said, the MySpace days, I remember that so vividly. But yeah, it hit this plateau, and then it just started getting bad to the point now where I social media was like my life when I was growing up, and now it has zero part of it. I do not participate in any social media anymore because it's not what I loved when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Well, it's not fun anymore.
I actively put a lot of effort into making sure I don't use this or that. And neither do I even kind of care to, because I've kind of feel like been there, done that. It's just a lot of hatred and a lot of fighting and a lot of like, I understand for big changes to take place, there has to be hard discussions, right? But can we meet in the middle, right? Can we balance a little more? Can we have the hard and have the fun? But the fun just seems to be completely just gone nowadays when it comes to the platforms. So why am I even engaging at this point? Regardless of what I say or what they say, it seems like the other person is just
spew.
Yeah.
They just want to spew negativity. And, you know, a mentor, getting back to the mentors that we talked about, once told me, surround yourself with positive people and you'll create positivity.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people that have the same ambition as you, and you'll do great things. But surround yourself with people that spew hatred, and you just become one of them.
Now, do y'all agree in the levels of, I think most people are thinking on the same level of like not wanting to use it much. And I kind of feel in about, 5 years maximum, we might be in a lot better state, because when you talk to so many people, all of us are saying the same thing of all this is a bunch of arguing and fighting, right? I think at some point we're going to have a movement take place to where people are just kind of done with it and back to just talking amongst each other again and not trying to use a social platform that goes out to the world and trying to bring back the balance of talking to your neighbors more, hanging out with your friends more, and not so much turning to online.
I
and
hope
such
so.
things.
I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg has its way. We're all going to be wearing goggles and having meetups in some virtual bar somewhere.
No, I think we're
No,
sick of all that.
fortunately, that business is tanking, so
I know
they're
it's
shifting
tanking,
away.
Like I said,
I think that alone is reflection of
they
what I'm
spend
saying.
billions on that.
I think people are sick of it. I really do. I believe it. But
Well, it's the negative impacts of social media, in my opinion, far outweigh the positive impacts because it's a really good tool. I mean, what they built, very good tool. If it was used and moderated in a way that helped humankind. But there's so many ways to circumvent it. In the dark web and what is it, all the sharing that goes on out on the dark web to collectively bring together like terrorism and domestic terrorism and things like that exists, and that happens because of these telephonic advances over time since we were kids.
Yeah.
Some of the technology that we've experienced and some of the technology that's coming down the pike. So we all know what, AI. All right. I couldn't do a show without mentioning AI right now. Cause
AI is huge right now. It's all anyone's doing, working on, talking about. It's huge.
AI, I have a friend that owns a marketing company, and they're using AI to benefit their findings for their customers in regards to marketing and what they can do to advance their marketing in their businesses. But I've also, I just recently read an article about how researchers, I forget which university, have been doing this research using AI, where AI on your computer can listen to your keystrokes on your keyboard and in a 95.5% accuracy rate, identify exactly what you're typing. Brian, I know I talked to you about this morning. Why don't you embellish on that a little bit? I mean, obviously there's some things that have to happen, right, in order for that to work perfectly. But what about down the road when they've figured out those advances?
Yeah, this went a different direction than I thought. AI is obviously top of mind for most people as far as future technologies. It's definitely the hype right now. But I almost see it as a fad, at least in its current form. Because AI in general has been around for decades now. It's hit mainstream media for specific aspects of it. But I don't know. To me, I think actually the biggest opportunity for change on the horizon with regards to technology is in the energy sector. If energy gets substantially cheaper, and we're talking like substantially cheaper with, new nuclear fusion technologies, obviously enhancements in solar and other renewables. Like, think of what that does from a tech perspective. Now everything can be electrified for nothing, for free, basically. But you give unlimited energy power to those systems, and it can grow exponentially. There's actually a YouTuber. Her name is Cleo Abram. She has this channel called Huge If True. And she actually explores the latest technologies and what it means for the future. And she did a whole segment on future energy and what that would mean and how it would transform technology. It's really fascinating. Definitely recommend checking it out. But yeah, she talks about all these different possibilities of what if energy becomes basically free. what it unlocks for a future of technology and everything being electrified. Because that is a hard boundary that a lot of systems face today. We don't think about that, but especially when you look at other countries that don't have a whole lot of propagation of technology, a lot of it's because of lack of accessible energy.
Well, think of what everyone has access to. Everyone has access to what? The sun, right? And that's all you need. At least until it, I don't know, what some Matrix level thing goes down or something to where they cut out the sun. But otherwise, we have infinite energy. Just
What do
do
we
that
got?
alone.
Sun, wind, water,
Yeah.
right? Natural resources.
Well, and like I said, if they continue these enhancements in nuclear fusion, that there's
alone
so much
is a
energy
constant
potential
loop.
there.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
reading an article. There was a big breakthrough in nuclear fusion not that long ago in regards to, yeah.
What was it? You know, Brian? What he's referencing? 'Cause I don't.
Yeah, I don't remember so they still have a ways to go, because right now the amount of energy they're putting into fusing the atoms is still more than what they're getting out of it.
Okay.
But they hit a new record for the amount of energy they got out of it.
Cool.
And it was like a substantial increase.
Artificial intelligence, AI, good or bad?
100% good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even with what we know it can do in the hands of the wrong actors.
Yeah. Yeah. If you study it, there was a breakthrough in the healthcare space earlier this year when it comes to sequencing proteins for viruses. This is something that humans have been working on for a number of years, and there was a certain amount of output they could do just based off physical limitations of their research.
Oh, wow.
But they fed those sequences into an AI model. And one thing AI is really good at is doing predictions based off of data inputs. It was in a matter of like a week or 2 weeks, it had produced sequences or basically theorized accurately what they would be for like 100x of what humans had done in the prior decade. So now they have the instructions to produce vaccines for a lot of different infectious diseases and stuff. And there's just no way humans could have done it in that short of time.
Yeah, we can take those data points, right, and we can excel we can excel the movement along those data points and see what's happening. My mom passed away from Alzheimer's, and it deals with I think it's called amyloid proteins or something attaching to different parts of your neurons, and it basically blocks. Your brain is like a network, like the internet.
Yeah,
it's like a network of networks. So it blocks different areas of your brain communications. So parts of your brain, like you forget how to swallow, and you forget how to, maybe talk fluently and things like that. And with algorithms and AI, we should be able to solve a lot of these diseases that happen to humankind a lot faster. You think we'll cure cancer and Alzheimer's disease and whatever else, Brian? What's your prediction? How long?
It's bound. Oh gosh.
I mean, it's
How
bound
long?
to be faster than it ever was prior to AI existing. That's automatic.
I would say confidently within our lifetime.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Within our lifetime,
Within my
especially
lifetime or your lifetime.
Hey, Shoop wants to live forever. Okay, we need confirmation on this now.
Anyway, we'll talk about the last brew. Now, this is from one of my favorite breweries, Perfect Plain. It's local in Pensacola. This is the Citra Spin Hazy IPA.
Now, I have had this, and I did like it. So
Good.
yeah.
Suds?
Yes. The Perfect Plain Citrus Spin Hazy IPA. Soft aromas of fresh citrus sliced into our fluffy IPA, hopped exclusively with Citra, welcoming the haze of this breezy beachside brew. 6.5% alcohol by volume. Just a note, hazy IPAs are also known as juicy IPAs.
Juicy.
Often
I like
taste
that word, juicy. All right, so We're going to go ahead and close out. Brian, I really want to thank you for joining us on our inaugural episode. I hope it all recorded, and I hope we're going to be able to put it out there, folks.
Was I supposed to hit a button?
Maybe.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Suds has been sitting back there drinking, so I don't think he knows what to do. So this show we might have to re-record. And Tim, thanks for joining me as always.
Yeah. This was phenomenal. Really loved it. Went really well. I think so. Right?
Yeah,
I loved it.
We've got some great guests coming up. We have a 2-time author that does a national speaking circuit on training in the insurance industry. And we have somebody that brought American sailing to Pensacola, Florida, and it's a big deal. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to where you listen to your favorite podcast. Hey, I'd really appreciate it if you share it with someone that might gain insight using our podcast. We'd really appreciate it. And be sure to check out thenerdsontap.com to learn more about what we're doing. Check out our 3-minute trailer. It's pretty funny.
It's an awesome trailer. It's 3 minutes of just pure bliss.
Yes. And that's it for today's show. So we thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining Nerds on Tap. Until next time, I'm Tim Shoup.
Later.